I'm Dana Perino, and this is Perino on Politics. I know we're cooking up the turkey, but what about a lame duck president? With a few weeks left in office, how will President Biden make it to the finish line? Joining me now is founder of the bipartisan government relations firm Mehlman Consulting, and that is Bruce Mehlman. Welcome to Perino on Politics. This is where I call up my smart friends like Bruce and find out what's on their minds about the state of American politics. So, Bruce, you know, we're almost 3 weeks from Election Day, and still people are processing the election. And I thought I'd just ask you what you're thinking about it. I know you've written a lot about it. You've done these great charts that you do on Sunday, and hopefully you can tell people where they can sign up so that they can be smart like that on Sundays too.
Well, first, it's great to be with you again, Dana. Happy Thanksgiving week, and I'm thankful that I have friends like you who invite me to do cool stuff like this. Also, some people love getting a 6 a.m. couple of charts on policy and politics every Sunday morning, and other people find that as pleasant as charts on politics at 6 a.m. on Sundays maybe could be. You're right. We've written a lot about the election. You know, as with so many elections, things seem a lot clearer in retrospect. You know, in retrospect, my takeaways are she lost for 3 reasons and he won for 3 reasons. She lost, A, with the incumbency burden. Incumbents around the world keep losing. She had a Biden burden. She was the sitting vice president for a president whose job approval was 40% and lower, not good. And she had kind of some own goals, a Harris burden. She, in multiple interviews, both from 2020, when she was very left of center and didn't disown a lot of those positions, to this time, when asked how she might be different than her boss, had no answers. So there was incumbency burden, Biden burden, Harris own burden. Trump won for 3 reasons, I think. First, he led on the issues, most importantly, the economy. Second, he led on attributes. The exit polls asked voters, what were you looking for? And the answer, number 1, was a leader. He won 2 out of 3 there. And number 2, who can bring change? And he won 3 out of 4 there. And finally, he got the zeitgeist right, I think. It seems like the Democrats' theory of the case was this was going to be an identity politics knife fight. And it turned out it was a culture war gunfight. And they kind of had the wrong thesis, and he had the right theory of what is animating today's voters.
Did you have a feeling for who would win early on in the contest after the switcheroo was made between Biden and Kamala Harris, or did you think it could go either way?
Well, you've known me a long time. First of all, I've called Donald Trump politically dead roughly 25 times. I'm 0 for 25. Also, this one, I kind of feel like I've had a decent level of confidence, but it keeps switching. So it seemed like Trump was going to win. Then it felt like, well, you know, maybe Biden can hang on and the not Trump forces could do it. And then heading into and very much after the debate, it was clear he's going to crush Biden. Then there was the switcheroo, and I assumed, well, she was not a strong candidate in 2020. She's still the incumbent. For all of the reasons I think she lost, I thought she'd be toast. But she gave a great speech at the convention, and she raised $1 billion in 2 months. And did kind of played pretty well. And so for a few weeks there, I started to think maybe he has this hard ceiling, which would have been the name of my report had he lost. But it turned out, for the reasons I talked about at the start there, she couldn't pull it off. Weirdly, 107 days is both way too short for someone to be a candidate and probably about 30 days too long for her. She peaked a month too early. And
she blew $1 billion. 107 days.
I mean, she certainly spent it all. One wonders, given that money, could anybody have not been the incumbent? Well, probably not. Could anybody have not, $1 billion doesn't make Biden approval job rating higher. It doesn't necessarily mean she'd lead on the economies. When I look at the Dems bench, and this, again, such a Monday morning quarterbacking thing, but if after the midterms when the Dems overperformed, if Joe Biden had said, I'm not running, I said I'd be a transitional figure, we're going to have an open primary and let the best candidate in the party win, I think the Dems have a pretty deep bench, the Josh Shapiro's, the Gretchen Whitmer's, Pete Buttigieg. I think they could have come up with somebody who might have been stronger and who wouldn't have been an incumbent. Obviously, it's easy to say that in retrospect, but that'll be, to me, the single biggest historical takeaway is they needed to give themselves the opportunity to switch horses and to do so with enough time to ensure that the best candidate won, and that the best candidate, as always happens in primaries, had enough time to kind of work out the kinks.
You study trends across the world, and one of the things we have seen is that incumbent governments all across the globe have been losing this year. And this was not different, but it was different in a way in that, Biden and Harris immediately, when they came into office, after saying that they were just going to return everything to normal, they really went pretty far left on some of the legislation. Now you have an economic advisor from the White House, Jared Bernstein, saying, gosh, maybe I feel a little bad about this inflation. When I remember doing all of these interviews, they would say, there's no inflation. This is a high-class problem, or it's very mild, it's transitory. And it wasn't. They said the border is secure, and it wasn't. They said Biden is running circles around people at the White House. That's clearly not true. And they said that crime was down. Just look at the statistics on page 78. And all of those things lead me to believe that they didn't necessarily have to end up in the same trend as other incumbent governments around the world, but their actions and their policies had consequences.
Well, you're right, Dana, although we both have a friend who said we'd be greeted as liberators when we went into Iraq during the administration in which we both served. Look, there's always, every White House has some combination of things they think will be true, things they hope will be true, things they hope to make true by claiming that they will be true. At the end of the day, they got the border horribly wrong. They got, with amnesty, that was an open invitation, and it led to millions of people seeking a better life. Most people who come here do so for good reasons in their world, in their minds, but it's why we need border control and border laws and rules and lines so that people can't cut in front of the line. And so they got the border wrong. They got inflation wrong. It's easy to Monday morning quarterback a lot of this stuff. But the interesting thing is, what was Joe Biden's mandate in 2020? I would have said the mandate, because it was the middle of the pandemic, was come in, calm things down. Donald Trump was a disruptor, which people wanted in 2016 and wanted clearly again in 2024. But in the heat of the pandemic, they wanted a little bit less disruption and a little bit more stability. Biden presumed, okay, that means people want me to come in and be the next LBJ or FDR, and had an overwhelmingly aggressive agenda. He accomplished a ton. It was super inflationary in the American Rescue Plan, but there was a lot of social policy he managed to get through there. You had the CHIPS Act. You had marriage equality. I mean, his was a very consequential first 2 years. The problem is I think, and you think, and I think the voters think, they meaningfully overreached their mandate, especially on culture policy issues, where they didn't have the mandate they had decided that they had. And they were kind of listening only to themselves. And I think ultimately that massively did them in. They went very far left, immigration being one of the issues. It's an important lesson for everyone, though, of, you get elected president and you assume you have this huge mandate. President Trump came in with a bigger mandate in 24. He's coming in than he had in 2016. But will they view that as a mandate for extraordinary wholesale change when ultimately they got about 50% of the electorate voting for him and 50% voting against them? Or will they see this as a chance to be focused, hit hard, and thereby build credibility? And that, to me, the durable two-termers tend to do that.
Two more questions in this segment. One, are the demographic changes and the political realignment where President Trump was able to basically win more blacks and Hispanics, but let's just say more of the working class, taking that away from the Democrats. Is that durable?
TBD. Trump is such a unique figure, whether the new coalition is the Trump coalition or kind of the new Republican Party. As our mutual friend Patrick Ruffini wrote a fantastic book called Party of the People. And the thesis is the GOP is heading towards being a multiracial working class party. And the Democrats, which used to be the party of the working class, lost their way and has become switched from the faculty floor to the factory floor to the faculty lounge. The Dems are going to compete again, I suspect, for working class folks. The challenge is that's an economic battleground. It's not an identitarian battleground.
And then my last question is, Mark Halperin, who does political analysis at his own Substack, which is Wide World of News, and he also does these two-way conversations. I highly recommend to people that if you want to delve in a little bit more and listen to what people are thinking about in a nice and civil way. Today in his newsletter, he said that there are some Democrats behind the scenes saying that there will be a hunger to hear from Kamala Harris and that a second act is in store for her. And I thought, I don't believe that. I actually don't think that's true. Obviously, I can be wrong. Maybe I'm calling that out prematurely, but I don't see a big clamoring for Kamala Harris to be the leader of the Democratic Party right now. But what do you think?
I share your skepticism, but, 1962, you won't have Dick Nixon to kick around anymore, and then he's the president and wins a strong reelection. I'm still taking the under. We saw her as a candidate in 2020, and we saw her admittedly with a very short runway in 2024. I just think her challenge at the end of the day is there are more talented politicians across the Democratic Party who aren't going to this time say, well, it's yours and we're not going to compete for it. And I think she's going to be out-campaigned by people with more talent.
We'll have more Perino on Politics coming right up. And we're back with more Perino on Politics. Bruce, I'm excited to have you on this podcast for so many reasons, but one of them is looking ahead, because you pay a lot of attention to, and you tell your clients, what's coming, what can be expected from this new government, the new administration that's coming in, what is possible on the legislative side of things. And maybe we could start with you talking about the rapid pace, which Trump has announced so many people, many of whom need Senate confirmation. He seems like he plans to hit the ground running, and he wants this team to be able to get a lot done in a short amount of time.
Yeah, the biggest advice I give to business clients and frankly to anybody trying to track this is not year one again. It's year 5. And we haven't had a year 5 separated from a year 4 since Grover Cleveland, which neither you nor I recall. But the first time around, anybody who becomes the president is figuring it out. There's a ton of responsibilities and powers. You get a daily brief from the intelligence people, and there's all these things you've got to learn what you can do, how to get things done. How do you pick people? How do you, who are the people you picked that worked? Who are the people that didn't work well with you? All of that in year 1 leads to stumbles and slow starts. And certainly Trump in 2017 was slow out of the gate. He picked people like Rex Tillerson. That didn't take very well. He deferred on things like judges and tax reform to Congress, where you had Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell and people who had been doing it for decades. This is year 5. He knows what he wants. He knows how to pick people. He understands what the job can do and can't do. He understands where he wants to, test the fence and see if it's electrified and where and how to push harder. He knows what the risks are. He's not worried about getting reelected. So for all these reasons, he is coming out of the gate really aggressive, really focused. He knows exactly what he wants. He knows how to drive this car. This is not the 2017 Trump rollout. This is a whole new thing that people weren't necessarily ready for, but he spent 4 years getting ready for this. So
the Senate will have 53 Republicans. You only need 51 to confirm people to the United States Senate. I'm sorry, you only need 51 votes in order to have somebody confirmed. But President Trump really seems fixated on recess appointments. But my point is, you don't even need them because you were able to win so many seats. Why not just confirm them altogether?
Yeah, TBD. I mean, you know how President Trump has always been, it's the opposite of speak softly and carry a big stick. It's speak very loudly and maybe or maybe don't use the stick. And so I suspect there won't be many recess appointments. Maybe there will be some, but when you look historically at recess appointments, they're far more common when your party doesn't control the Senate. So if the Republicans lose the House in the midterms, which given the numbers is a high risk, lose the Senate is a low risk. But if they lost the Senate and he didn't have senators in place willing to confirm his people, then he maybe would do recess appointments. He likes the idea of having maximum authority and minimum hassle, but it would shock me if a month or 2 months into his term, he says, okay, House and Senate controlled by my party, I need you guys to take a walk so I can avoid the whole hassle of advise and consent. I just don't see the GOP saying we're happy to adjourn and relent, and you just do whatever you feel like. I suspect he'll make noise that's what he might want to get to, but I don't see that happening in 25.
The big issue for Americans was the economy and certainly inflation, the price of things. It does seem like consumer sentiment is getting better. The news out, I think that was Friday, saying that people are starting to feel a little bit better about the economy. Maybe that's because they're anticipating better things under President Trump. But from your perspective on the economy, what can be done right away in order to help bring some relief to people?
Well, first, you got smarter friends on this. I suspect you have the Tim Adamses and the other really wonderful people here who are deeper divers than I on the economy. I start with, I'm not sure the economy is as bad as kind of the political messaging around the election tried to make it out to be. GDP is strong. The stock market was strong before Trump got announced as the winner, and it spiked a bunch after that. Inflation rate is low. The problem for a lot of people is that prices went up big time. The most inflation in 40 years in 2022, but probably thanks to the actions of the Federal Reserve, inflation's kind of back down in its year over year. Prices don't generally go down. I mean, none of us expect that our wages are going to go into reverse. None of us want our house price to go into reverse. So it feels like the price floor is a new normal. But I'm not sure we're in a moment where I would want to see a stimulus package. If inflation's the problem,
that might make it worse.
Right. Fiscal stimulus isn't the answer. And my house price is good. My stock, 401k is looking pretty good. Inflation is not, the unemployment is not too high. So for now, I think the question is, how can they implement the really big ideas that they have around things like tariff and tax cutting without that leading to a return of inflation?
There's a lot of excitement around what Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy have been tasked with. This is the DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. We both know that this has been tried before, but sometimes it's just tinkering around the edges. But there seems to be, even from Fareed Zakaria of CNN, some optimism or some belief that perhaps this time they'll be able to get more done. What do you make of the whole thing? Especially you live there in D.C. One of the targets is the fact that so many people have not returned to work in the federal workforce, and this seems to be really an issue that they want to tackle.
Yeah, look, nothing makes people return to the office as much as the sense that the management is about to let 10 or 20% of the workforce go. But you're right, it's been tried before. In fact, I've been part of efforts to try it. When you probably recall when Donald Trump got elected the first time, late 2016, he had a meeting in the Trump Tower. It got a ton of with tech CEOs, and it got a ton of press. A group called the Tech CEO Council, which I lead, had our chair, Ginny Rometty, then the CEO of IBM, hand Donald Trump a report. Here's how the government, leveraging best practices in technology, could save $1 trillion over a decade by being more efficient. The report, Google it if you want. It's called 1 Trillion Reasons. Donald Trump thought that was a good idea back then, and he stood up a group called the Office of American Innovation, led by Chris Liddell. We did what we could. It's very hard to change government. It's even harder to change big departments. If you want to get more efficient, you have three options. You can, it's like getting in shape. You can exercise, you can diet, or I guess you could have an amputation. The exercise is leveraging technology for the government to run smarter and run leaner. That's the first thing all businesses do. The second thing is diet, cut spending, reduce budgets, and figure if you're willing to give people less money, they're going to figure out how to do more with less. That requires Congress's help, and Congress loves programs, and it's politically unpopular to cut spending. The Musk-Ramaswamy approach at the start is consistent with the Isaacson book about Musk. Delete, delete, delete. Maybe they're going to propose massive wholesale revisions, just removing departments. You can't just do that. Congress ultimately decides what departments exist and how much they get funded. But as a headline matter, may bring a lot more energy and a lot more momentum than the Tech CEO Council's 1 Trillion Reasons report, which, again, we were really pleased. We saw progress and we helped drive the exercise effort in a useful way. But I think this is going to bring a whole lot more momentum. The other big difference is, look at the debt. We're at $36 trillion in federal debt. That is a whole lot more than when we handed the report to President Trump in 2016.
Let me ask for a prediction. I can go first. Do you believe that if you and I speak 4 years from today, that the Department of Education will still exist? I'm going to say it will exist in some form, but much diminished from what it is today. I know this is a bold prediction and that people have predicted these types of things before. And even as I'm saying it out loud, I'm thinking, Dana, are you crazy? But I'm going to go ahead and say I think it should have a fundamental change. And this might be the presidency that does that. You?
I agree with your direction. I think lots of departments could use significant revisitation and reworking. A lot of these things were developed after World War II, and inertia means they haven't changed. That said, you are predicting more wholesale change than I would expect. I don't see ultimately getting rid of a federal Department of Education. Maybe they will figure out ways to focus better. Certainly, whether it marries up in some ways with the Department of Labor is an interesting question. Demographically, we have fewer students going forward. We spend far more on administrative costs than we ever have in education. A lot of folks who watched their kids learn from home during the pandemic concluded they're not teaching kids the things that we think are most in K to 12 are most relevant going forward. And we all saw with the university level after the Hamas terrorist attacks that universities have kind of lost the plot when it comes to freedom of speech and rigor of thought.
It's pretty exciting to think about all of it, and maybe we'll put this in the vault and come back to it in 4 years, if you'll join me then as well. We'll have more Perino on Politics coming right up. And we're back with Perino on Politics. Bruce, this is where I ask my smart friends, what am I missing? What are you paying attention to? And is there something you're telling your clients that they should be watching that might not be on the radar at the moment?
Well, you don't miss a lot, so it's hard to come up with stuff that you're not missing. To me, though, it kind of goes back to just like this is not year one again, it's year 5. It's a very changed world. And what I've spent time thinking about in my notional Q1 slide deck that I'd put on my Substack, Dana, will be a deep dive into how it's a changed world. You think about the world was fundamentally at peace in 2017. Now it's a world very much at war. Inflation was gone. They worried about deflation in 2017. We're worried about inflation now. You had the picks that Donald Trump put into his cabinet the first time were mostly establishment types. He's got a lot of disruptors like this time. The House Republican Party was almost overwhelmingly people who had been serving long before Donald Trump got there in 2017. Now a vast majority of them, more than half, are people who arrived in the era when Trump was president or in the interregnum between the two presidencies. We were a net energy importer still. Now we're a net exporter. ESG was rising. ESG is now hiding. I've got a list of about 20 more, but too many folks, I think, presume that the future, we've seen this movie. We know how it goes. Here's what you got to do. Here's what you got to say. And while there's a lot about Donald Trump that hasn't changed. It's a changed world, and he's going to have to react to it. And as we said earlier on, he knows how to drive this car in a way he didn't last time.
Tell people about where they can find your Sunday Substack and why they should get it. I love it.
Well, I appreciate it. You're a junkie. God bless you. So first, if you've never heard of Substack, that's a problem. If you've heard of Substack, Bruce, Mehlman, it's called an age of disruption is sort of the name of the Substack broadly. It's free, most importantly. So sign up. You don't like it, drop off. It's really simple. But I try to put out every Sunday morning 6 charts. Sometimes I make them thematic. Other times they're things that I've seen. My goal is 5 minutes or less because it is Sunday morning. Ideally, it'll be a few things each week where you'll think, it didn't think about that, or that's pretty interesting. If you've never heard of Substack, it's a way to receive newsletters that's easier than having to go to somebody's random thing. They're not going to ask you for a credit card. You just enter your email. They don't sell your email to people. I sure as hell don't sell your email to people. But they confirm you wanted to do it so that nobody can sign you up against your will.
Awesome. You are terrific. What a great American. Bruce Mehlman, thank you so much, and happy Thanksgiving.
And the best to you and your family as well, Dana.
Thank you. Take care. Thanks, Bruce. Listen ad-free with a Fox News Podcast Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app.